Okay, and we're back for part 5 of chapter 2 of Tell Me Why, and we'll be continuing right now.
Ouch! Watch it! You're stepping on my foot! Can you hear what they're saying? Quiet! We don't want Mom to catch us out of bed.
There's no money.
I've never asked you for anything, but right now they need you.
It's not gonna happen.
I've got everything I need to nail your ass in that barn.
And just what do you think happens after that?
What do you mean?
Well, if those kids have a father, you really think there's a court out there that'll let you keep them?
No! You have no claim to my children. Get the hell off my property, now! If you ever come back here, I'm going to kill you!
Allison?
I'm going to kill you.
No. No.
I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you.
And as I thought, we were very, very close to the end, but the good news is this will give us some opportunity to go through the decisions here at the end. So here's my best guess. As we're working through a story that I'm not sure if the story is very complicated, but the way that it's unfolding to me invites an unusual degree of speculation, and I'm very mindful of the fact that particularly in this episode, through the previous 4 parts, I've paused at a couple of points. I usually want to let the story speak for itself and the characters to talk, and then we can talk about it at the end. But this episode pardon me for 1 second. Sorry. This episode in particular was just, we were introduced to a lot of additional information about characters that we'd met at the previous episode, and I was trying to keep it all straight, and for better or worse, figured that the best way to do that was to pause every once in a while to say, okay, here's what I think is happening, and there were some theories thrown out as we went. That said, based on all of the information that we have right now, I think that Sam Kansky and the twins' father are separate people. I don't know for sure. I feel like there's some information that would lead us to believe that Sam Kansky was the twins' father, in that we know that he was married, that his wife Laura, I think the name was dropped, left him over whatever happened between him and Marianne. The things here that don't make a lot of sense is somebody who had come to Marianne's dock by boat in the dead of night, who was blackmailing her over, oh, do you think that once the kids have a father, any court would let them stay with you? Talking like that? Does that seem in line with Sam Kansky, somebody who went on to hold up the property, to maintain the property for a decade, free of charge, so that someday the twins could return? And he would, yeah, he'd have some keys, and he seems like maybe he doesn't really respect some social boundaries, and maybe he was a weird creepo with Marianne. But what he doesn't seem like is a blackmailer who didn't care about her, because the guy in that boat doesn't care about Marianne or her family at all, and is willing to pull any lever, press any button, exploit any opportunity to hurt her in order to get what he wants. But the question is, what does he want? Now, in fairness, she was also blackmailing him. She said, I have everything I need in that barn, or shed, or whatever she said, to nail you. It's possible that something was removed from the box between the time that she said that and when the box was found years later? I don't think so, because it seemed like it was pretty well boarded up underneath there. But what does she have in there? Well, she's got letters that are not signed, which would make sense if somebody was having an affair. Letters written by somebody who was having an affair with Marianne. No other names are provided, not my wife Laura or anything like that. Based on what we hear from Tessa, just regular conservation of characters would lead you to believe that that was Sam Kansky, that Sam was having an affair with Marianne behind the back of his wife. His wife found out and left him, and there you go. But that doesn't make a lot of sense, I don't think. I think that the twins' father was somebody else, a different married man with whom Marianne may have had an affair, and that brings us to this current situation of he was concerned that Marianne was going to rat him out, expose the affair. That's the other thing. What is he coming around for? What is he confronting Marianne about when she says, I'm trying to remember the exact line, but if you're so worried about how I'm doing or that I might like lip off, I'm trying to remember exactly what she says, then you could loan me some money. She doesn't say give. She wants to borrow some money from this person. She only needs enough to get by because this is a particularly harsh winter, etc., etc. It's everything that we heard from Eddie. Based on all of that, I think that this was somebody else, somebody who was worried about news getting back to their wife. And does that sound like Sam? Because again, Sam's wife left him. So we know that the secret got back to him at some point, and the way that Tessa talked about it made it sound as though Marianne was still alive. I also haven't given up the idea that those two letters were written by different hands. The difference in the stylings of Marianne is very difficult for me to look past. There are some other similarities, and again, it could be that maybe they just didn't know how the name was properly stylized in the first try. You talk to somebody, but you don't necessarily know that it's Mary-Ann at first, and then you correct that later on. Possible. But that's a sort of like subtle little detail that I feel like a lot of writers and artists might not think about. And that the decision to present Marianne differently in two different letters feels very deliberate. So maybe that's metagaming it a little bit, but I'm going to go out on record by saying that whether or not the first letter was written by Sam Kansky, the second one definitely was not. I just don't see that. So also the person in the boat didn't sound drunk. That was the other thing. I had theorized earlier in the episode that Sam Kansky, maybe he becomes very different, much more dangerous, much more aggressive when he has had enough to drink. The person in that boat sounded perfectly sane, perfectly lucid, and perfectly malevolent. So I will find out, but I'm going to say I don't think the person in the boat is Sam Kansky. And who else might it be? Well, there's an older gentleman who came over on the boat with Tyler, may or may not have any idea who Tyler and Allison are when they're just a couple people on the boat. But what if he does? What if he knows exactly who they are? Because he's heard that the Ronan twins are coming home to fix up the property a little bit and then sell it off. And what if he's worried that in their exploration of the grounds they're somehow gonna come across that box, because he knows it's in the shed, but what he doesn't know is where it is. He doesn't know that it's boarded up under the floorboards where no sane human is ever going to be looking. And even then, the new property owner might dig up the floorboard and knock down the shed and find it by accident. So based on what he's heard that's going to be happening with that property, now after a good long time, he's come back to whatever the hell the name of this town is. I can't remember the names of people nor the names of places. But now he's come back because he's going to go into that shed and find whatever he was threatened with a decade earlier. There's one guy who that might be so far in the storyline, and it's the white-haired man that Tyler met on the boat, and then again here in the in the shop there talking to Michael. if we had not seen that guy again in this episode, I would have thought that it was just a random encounter that Tyler had as he commented on this guy's weird bumper stickers. Well, not weird, but statement bumper stickers, I guess. He's one of those people who really wants you to know by reading his car where he falls on certain issues. But here he is, poking his head in, saying hello again, if only briefly here in the second episode. That's who I think it is. I think that that's the twins' father. I think that that's the guy who was blackmailing Marianne. I think that's the guy that she was talking to when she said, "I'm going to kill you." There's another piece of information here, which is that echo that Allison is hearing over, "I'm going to kill you." That is exactly, and I don't mean like the same words, I mean, to my memory, the exact way that it sounded when Marianne was waving the shotgun in Tyler's direction at the end of the pier at the end of the first episode. I'm wondering if, with everything that went on, somehow the memory of Marianne saying to the man in the boat, "I'm going to kill you," became confused with what Marianne may or may not have said out there on the docks. And remember that from what we were exposed to at the beginning of this episode, Allison had like just her heart thumping in her ear. She couldn't hear anything. We don't think that she heard Marianne's final statement of "this isn't what," as she fell in the water. I'm wondering if, due to their voice, their psychic link to one another, the twins' memories of exactly what happened during that extremely emotionally charged moment on the pier became confused with something that could have happened earlier that day, earlier that evening, but it seems more likely a few days earlier. I feel like the timeline, not the timeline, but the exactly what happened at what point on what day remains a little bit confused because the twins are trying to piece together what they remember, and even their memories of certain events have been lost or corrupted to time. Finally, before we read ahead, that story that we read about the secret keeper giving the twins their voice. When I first saw the voice, I thought, maybe this story is why the kids came to call it their voice. But the further that we read into the story, it's a direct description of exactly what they can do. They can hear each other's, and they can feel what the other person feels. For that to have worked its way into a story where Marianne, in the artwork, secretly inserted a 3-digit code that would serve as the lockbox box that the twins didn't even know about, I mean, it's possible the twins wrote that part of the story, and Marianne was like, "Wow, you kids are so imaginative. You always come up with such clever ideas." Doesn't it seem more likely that Marianne was an active participant in that story and wove in some explanation about how a psychic ability that she had, maybe the ability to read other people's minds in general, was transferred to her children, but they could only communicate with one another? So she sort of wrote that into this fable of the Book of Goblins. I don't know, but it's such a precise description of what the twins can do that it can't possibly be coincidence. And I don't know that anybody playing a game from the creators of Life is Strange would be sitting there being like, "By God, I demand an exact explanation of exactly what these powers are and where they came from." That's just not how this developer rolls. So it does feel like it's meant to reveal to us as the player that Marianne was a lot more aware of the twins' abilities than she might have let on even to them, and maybe it's why she lived in a secluded place. Let me ask you a question. Here, let me submit this for consideration. If you were capable of reading people's minds or communicating with people psychically, wouldn't you want to live someplace away from people? Wouldn't that noise be overwhelming, even if you had the ability to shut it off? What if it was still an effort that you had to make every single day? What if the emotions of people around you tend to seep into yours and present themselves as mental illness, where you might have been inspired to dance brazenly in the middle of a grocery store aisle, or made you irrationally angry when you didn't feel it yourself, but rather were being like affected by the emotional output of others, wouldn't you want to live someplace far away from others, maybe out in the woods, where the two twins that you have had, maybe they are starting to come into their powers. You don't know if they're going to have those powers themselves or what form they might take, so you raise them a little bit away from others and you keep an extremely watchful eye on them. I don't know that this is part of it. It could be. And the fact that there's a direct reference to the voice in the story completely reframes what I think Marianne might have known about the twins' psychic abilities. So that's just a few thoughts there. Oh, and I did also want to say one thing on a comment that Michael had made before we move forward. Tom, without a lot of additional information, Tom is running on a campaign of, among other things, gun control. And here in the United States, we might recognize that as being a democratic or left-leaning position that, that's sort of what we might recognize that as the common, popular, national understanding. And that Michael is the one. So we, unless, it's possible that Michael's bi, like let's keep our ears open. But Michael is at the least interested in men. So the natural, immediate thought might be, oh, well, if Tom has Democratic leanings and the Democratic Party in the United States tends to be much friendlier to the gay and trans community relative to the Republican Party, I feel like, especially on a national basis, that's relatively confident to say, wouldn't Michael be more inclined to side with Tom? Well, it's more complicated than that, because Tom is not a single issue voter. And when it comes to the topic of gun control, he has reservations based on the fact that in the past, when the government has restricted or even taken away weapons from Michael's people, that hasn't worked out so well for them. I really appreciated that perspective, because I'm sitting here and I'm listening to what the characters are saying and the perspective that they provide. And here's Michael coming in saying, no, I'm not so sure that I am very pro-gun control, because set aside what might be happening at a national level or any other considerations, for me and my people, not having access to weapons to defend ourselves against the encroaching government tyranny has been extremely bad for my people, my culture. I appreciated having that added into the game, that additional perspective from somebody like Michael. So I just wanted to call that out. The game and the writing is, I cannot speak to authenticity or effectiveness, but I can say that it's at least thoughtful. And that's something that I'm really enjoying about this. So that's just a few thoughts. My understanding, by the way, is that Dontnod are French developers. I think that's accurate. If it's wrong, please forgive me. So they may also be coming to it from a perspective completely outside United States perspective. I don't know, and I don't know very much about the people who made this, like the specific developers, the writers. So this is just me thinking aloud. I really keyed in on that comment from Michael and thought it was very interesting to have that in here as well. Let's read through our decisions, and then we'll see if there's anything else to say by the end. Tyler and Allison, and we've got sort of like a single star there, which feels nice. I feel like that's them being unified, with each other. Tyler felt relied on when Allison chose his memory at the house. Was I Allison right then? I thought I was Tyler. Well, regardless, 58% chose Tyler's memory. I want to say, wasn't it last episode it was very even? So it's interesting that more people chose Tyler's memory for a few different reasons. I did it for the reasons that I stated at the time, and as the scenes have played out, knowing now that we've sort of pieced together what the call had been, yeah, I feel like Marianne would have been very angry, because if Marianne is being blackmailed by somebody that they're going to take her kids away, to have a report sent to Child Protective Services like that, that makes it that much more likely. Yeah, she'd be angry, because if there's one thing that we know without any doubt, it is that Marianne loved her kids. She was extremely protective of them. Everyone in every version of every story about Marianne, she loved her kids and was very protective of them. Tyler felt heard about needing time when Allison refused the house showing. Now, I want to say that I made that choice before. I was thinking that it's not appropriate for Allison to have made this decision without consulting with Tyler first. That said, I was also thinking about the fact that Tyler has indicated that he wants to look into the life and times of their mother more, and that he wouldn't be cool with selling it on a very tight timetable. So there were a few different reasons. I'm not surprised that 66% refused that appointment. I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that I did. Allison felt hopeful about becoming a family when Tyler forgave Eddie. Hold on, let me think about this. Allison felt hopeful about becoming a family when Tyler... Oh, right, Tyler forgave Eddie. Again, I'm putting together the different people. Yeah, so interesting that 80% forgave Eddie. I like that. I talked a lot about that at the time. I found it extremely suspicious that Eddie lied about when was the last time that he saw Marianne. And now that we know a little bit more about it, I can understand why Eddie would have perceived that to be a victimless lie, in that the reason that he went to go see Marianne was to give her the heads up that Child Protective Services would be stopping by, something that he was almost certainly forbidden from doing. He liked Marianne, at least as a friend, cared about her, wanted to give her the heads up, but technically that was a decision that would only have negative consequences for, I suspect, everybody involved, not just Eddie. I think that would have been a very costly decision even to Marianne. So he did not reveal that he had done that. And it was otherwise, he didn't think, germane to a situation where he had Tyler right there saying, I did it, I killed my mom. That's not a Child Protection Services thing. That's... I get where Eddie's coming from. So the more that we've learned about Eddie, the more that I feel at this point we're learning about somebody whose heart was genuinely in the right place. Yes, sometimes is dishonest, but generally with an eye towards protecting people and their loved ones from unnecessary pain. I get it. And as a result, I felt much more ready to forgive Eddie. Tyler is so angry about everything, but hopefully that's the turning point where he can begin to see Eddie as Allison does, someone who really is trying to do right by them, and the community, for that matter. Eddie was touched by Tyler's forgiveness. 80% forgave Eddie. Michael was heartened by Tyler's compliment. 80% accepted Michael's compliment. I'm not sure which one, because it did feel like there were a few in there, but yeah, man, if... Okay, and Michael Abila, we're learning his last name. If Michael and Tyler are into each other, rock on, man. So when I'm coming to this, I'm like, I don't know what sexual orientation Tyler feels most closely aligned with. It hasn't really come up. There haven't been any references that I've picked up on. But if Tyler is capable of reciprocating, then why not? Let's go for it. I feel like Tyler's gonna have his shit figured out in terms of I feel like Tyler has lived a life of heavy is it privation or deprivation? Or are those interchangeable right here? Tyler hasn't had a lot of space to explore relationships during his time at Fireweed. So the idea that he would get out, be free, be setting off on a new life, and find someone who seems to be interested in him, and Tyler feels a spark and a connection with him, sure, why wouldn't he? Tyler... I don't feel like Tyler's somebody who throws caution to the wind, but I also feel like Tyler might be in a position where he's willing to finally be able to spread his wings and explore what life has to offer. So I feel like he's here for it. Testa felt grateful that the twins kept her in their lives. I am surprised that the percentage is as high. I feel like Tessa is somebody who would be very easy to judge harshly based on the fact that the whole conversion camp thing, that's really difficult to get past. And I feel like it's very easy to condemn and less easy and less natural for people to say, Tessa might legitimately not have known how horrific and abusive those programs are. She might legitimately not have known and learned in later years how bad they are and completely changed her tune on that, which I have to say, it feels like she has. There's a version of Tessa out there in the real world who would maliciously misgender, dead name, mistreat Tyler, do everything in her power to make Tyler feel ashamed and unwelcome and everything else. And I don't see that from this person. As I noted earlier in the episode, there might be examples of aggressions that are coded in such a way that I'm just not going to pick up on. And if they're out there, my eyes and ears are open and ready to learn, because sometimes people are very good at blowing their dog whistles in a way that others are not necessarily going to recognize. What I see from Tessa is someone who is genuinely contrite about the mistakes that they made, who would have liked to have done better for Marianne, doesn't have all of the details, and today in the year 2015, I keep forgetting exactly what year it is, feels ashamed of the way that she pressed for the conversion camp, and indeed might at the time have done so thinking to herself, well, if one of the twins is away, then the burden on Marianne will be less, the stress on Marianne will be less, and here's a fun summer camp that Tyler can go to. It's not a fun summer camp. Don't do it. But if Tessa believed that, that's very different than somebody who took those actions 10 years ago and now in the modern day feels exactly the same way and has learned nothing. And I return again to Tyler's comment to... Was it to Tessa? Was it to Tessa, or did he say this later to Allison? If we don't leave room for people to grow and change, then what hope is there? I don't remember the exact phrasing that he uses. If I'm to condemn somebody like Tessa for having been wrong in the past and then learned more and changed her mind and opened up her mind and become more accepting of people, then what am I to say about myself, where I've been wrong about things in the past, learned and grew, and am hopefully better today than I was before, right? Like, so I don't think that anybody just deserves a blanket pardon for anything that they said or did in the past. I am saying that if somebody today is singing a very different and very consistently different tune to what they were doing a decade earlier, can we at least allow for the possibility that they are better people than they were before? And Tyler said that directly, and that's why Tessa was forgiven. I chewed on that for a moment, but I compared everything that we've known. And also, the fact that Tessa was hesitant to share what she knew with the twins, that can sometimes come off as deceitful. Sometimes it can come off as shame. She's ashamed. She's ashamed that she failed to help Marianne, that she failed to recognize what Marianne was going through, that she withdrew help or reported Marianne's theft to the police rather than saying it's only one box of detergent. Note that it was a box of detergent. It wasn't candy. It wasn't cigars. It was detergent to clean the kids' clothes. And probably her own as well, but like it was laundry supplies. Tessa, I believe, reported Marianne to the police in part because she was legitimately concerned for the well-being of the children. Some of that concern was deeply misguided with a belief that Tyler needed to be fixed. But that's her ignorance on that point, and it doesn't mean that she wasn't also concerned for the children's nutrition and safety and possibly their exposure to whatever, like was it Sam Kansky? getting drunk, potentially getting violent? Was it some other man that maybe Tessa knew vaguely about and knew that Marianne was very afraid of, but also that Marianne wouldn't go to the police, and maybe Tessa was concerned about that? I want to be careful not to just invent in my own head all of these excuses for Tessa's behavior, but we don't know all the details, and Tessa being really intensely, dangerously wrong about that conversion camp doesn't mean that she was speaking from, acting out of a point of just hatred for Tyler or Marianne when she was reporting them to the police. If it later becomes apparent that Tessa reported Marianne to the police because she wasn't taking the conversion camp idea seriously, then fuck her all up and down. I just don't get that sense. I feel like she was primarily motivated out of, like, I don't know. Here's a single parent with no job, no income, no prospects, and not even like anybody willing to give her charity. What the hell are the kids eating? Because she's not hunting for venison out there. It's complicated, I think, is where we'll end that. But anyway, those are some thoughts on why Tessa was forgiven. I feel like Tessa still has some growing to do, but we're going to let it ride there. So I'm going to hit continue, and I think that that's going to start us on the next chapter, which I will immediately pause out of and then hit back to the main menu right there. Yep, return to main menu. And that's going to do it for this latest episode 2 of Tell Me Why. We will be back I will be recording the next episode in 1 week's time, but if these episodes are being put up in the channel, it is far more likely that the next episodes will be appearing very quickly, probably as early as tomorrow. So although I will be back in 1 week, hopefully very soon you'll be able to just let the playlist or the collection here on Twitch roll forward, and it will just continue on into chapter 3. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this continuing playthrough of Tell Me Why. I swear to God, every single time I almost say Life is Strange. For joining me on this continuing playthrough of Tell Me Why. And unless I'm mistaken, I believe that the next episode will be the finale. So we will see you here in 1 week and find out how it all turns out and what answers we get by the end. Until then, you guys, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.